Chapter 11 When Training Turns into a Breakdown. Boom!
Kane was inside the isolated training room, obviously testing his abilities and trying to get as used to his power as possible. Even if he looked lazy to others, since the day he had arrived in that world, he hadn't taken a single day off. He trained every single day inside those rooms, without fail. At that moment, he was in the middle of a fight against two training dummies at the same time. One was at level 1 and the other at level 2 difficulty. Even though they were average, those levels would already be considered insane in regular magic academies. But this was Vehart, which made everything worse. Kane dodged a frontal punch with a movement so fluid it looked like the classic Matrix scene, which made him wonder if he should buy a long coat and some sunglasses. As his body leaned back, the other dummy tried to kick him from behind.
Kane smiled. "I was already waiting for you."
It was like he had planned it from the start. In that instant, a repulsion wave exploded behind him, throwing both dummies away. Push everything, repel everyone, this technique is literally my Devapath. The level 1 dummy flew far away, while the level 2 landed on its feet and was already preparing for a new strike, but before it could do anything,
Kane appeared right in front of it.
With a punch powered by vector force, the dummy was launched against the wall. Before the limp body could hit the floor, Kane pointed his fingers as if firing a wave of invisible pressure.
2. The blast hit the dummy hard.
It was enough to shut it down completely. The level 1 dummy, thrown farther, was approaching more slowly. Level 1s really lost their charm. Kane had already gotten completely used to that level of difficulty.
"Come at me, Chrome Dome." The dummy tried to hit him, but a repulsion zone appeared in front of Kane, deflecting the blow with ease.
But in that moment, a light tremor ran through his body. He looked at his hands.
"They're shaking, looks like this really is the limit."
He then stepped forward with a firm step, gathered the remaining mana into his fist, and struck the dummy square in the chest. The impact created a short repulsion wave that burst in the air with a muffled crack.
Thram!
The dummy was thrown back, crashing into the wall with a dull thud. The impact was strong enough to knock it down and shut off its systems completely. Kane lowered his arms, breathing slightly heavily. His hands were still trembling a bit. He let out a slow breath, as if releasing all the week's exhaustion with it.
"Looks like I'll have to go back to the forest." His mana reserve in the inertia core was almost empty.
He had been overusing his abilities these past days. And after being used as a test subject in Professor Aaron's exam, he ended up spending more energy than planned.
Without stored mana, his repulsion force became unstable.
And worse, the side effects started to show up more easily.
Looks like accepting Yen's offer was a good choice in the end.
He then remembered the conversation with her in the cafeteria. She wanted help to better control her mana. At first, he had refused. But then she mentioned an item. At first, he thought it was some kind of magical steroids. But when he let Yen explain better, he understood what it really was, the vitality condenser.
Kane knew that thing very well.
What made him think it was something else was the fact the name hadn't been chosen yet. In the game, it already had a definitive name, Viralis Core.
In the community, everyone called it the Big Tank Gem, because it made any character tougher than a raid boss. A walking tank. If I can get a few of those, maybe my body will hold out longer. He knew that in that world, uncontrolled use could mess up his mana circulation.
But the chance to reinforce his weak body, even just a bit, was too tempting to ignore.
Looks like in the end I really will have to help her. Clack. Clunk.
Kane heard a strange sound behind him. The kind of muffled mechanical noise only a broken dummy trying to stand up would make. Slowly, he turned his face, already with a tired look. The level 2 dummy, the one he was sure was already out of commission, was dragging itself toward him, with a crooked posture but still active.
To enter the isolated training rooms, students had to wear bracelets that served as danger indicators.
If the student passed out, the dummies would stop functioning immediately. If the student took them off, the dummies would also stop. Since Kane was tired and nearly drained, the ideal would be to stop there.
But being him, maybe that wasn't going to happen.
He slowly raised his head, staring at the dummy still coming toward him.
He was annoyed, sweaty, exhausted, and even so.
Kane took a deep breath and shouted loudly, with a deep, mocking voice, "What are you looking at?" The scream echoed through the metallic room. With a burst of motion, Kane launched himself at the dummy with a look of pure disgust, like he was about to teach someone a lesson for not knowing their place.
"You can't even fall properly, you walking piece of junk." == 16:34 in the afternoon, so, have you recovered from the other day?
That was weeks ago, Iris.
Iris approached, handing a drink bottle to Elena. The two were in an open area of the academy, enjoying the break.
And, as always, Iris had that teasing little smile.
"I just want to know if you're completely okay. After that little runaway of yours." "Runaway? You attacked me from behind." Iris raised her hands in surrender. "I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. That snake disguised as an angel."
Anyone looking at Iris would think she was pure sweetness. But those who truly knew her. Iris Valen, daughter of the Emperor of the Black Sea, had inherited the worst of her father.
"Well, at least I got 178 points." Elena smiled. Despite everything, she knew Iris was a sore loser. "You only got that because that idiot Raiden helped you. I could have finished it on my own."
"Yeah, right, train more so you don't lose next time."
Iris turned and walked away waving like she'd just won a war. And the worst part? She actually managed to piss off Elena. HMPF. What am I doing? Getting mad at a brat. Elena looked at the bottle.
She opened it without even looking at the label, brought it to her lips, and took a sip. The taste was horrible. Bitter, strong, with a slight touch of despair.
Cough. Cough.
She choked a little, making a face. When she finally turned the bottle to see what it was, she read in small, flowery letters, Thunder Root Tea with glacial fire extract, stimulates magical circulation, strengthens mana veins.
May cause temporary loss of taste. That brat, she looked up at the clouds.
If you're going to give me something to drink, at least make it alcoholic.
Going back in time had its perks. But putting up with everything again? Brats, provocations, and lukewarm tea? Now that was enough to make her want to give up.
She then stood up in a quick step, shaking off all the laziness that clung to her body, heading toward the training fields.
It's almost time. I need to be ready.
The first act was coming.
And Elena wanted to be more than prepared.
It was only natural that she knew a good part of what was going to happen.
And a big problem would show up right at the beginning of the Academy's classes. More specifically, during alchemy class.
As she walked through the Academy's halls toward the training fields, Elena let her thoughts take over. If she could just tell everyone everything, she would lift the weight off her shoulders and let the Academy handle the problem.
But that was impossible for her.
She had already tried doing that while talking with Lyra. Every time she tried to say something about the future, her head would hurt like it was about to explode. It had become more than clear that this was a secret she had to carry alone.
Maybe I should do like him, live in the now?
But as if the heavens had heard her thoughts and wanted to mess with her. While she was walking through the corridor of the isolated training rooms,
Kane came out of a room up ahead. He's really been coming here every day?
Kane looked exhausted.
They still had one last class before ending the day.
Wearing himself out like that was pointless, but if she considered the fact that he always slept through classes, maybe it wasn't that strange. Kane walked past her. Despite being out of breath, he looked satisfied, with a slight smile on his face. In the isolated training corridor, she walked past the rooms.
Several students were training, even in pairs or groups of 3.
But what caught her attention was the room Kane had just left. The screen on the door displayed a red warning, mana maintenance, room unavailable for the next 30 minutes. Curious, she stepped closer to the glass wall and gently pressed her face against it, trying to get a better view inside. The glass was slightly fogged from the inside, but she could still see part of the damage. One of the dummies was lying on its back against the wall, completely powered off.
The other looked like it had been brutalized.
It was lying on the floor, torso leaning to the side, head twisted at an unnatural angle, and impact marks scattered across its metal body. The protective paint that mimics synthetic skin was peeling in several spots, and there was still a faint electric hiss coming from inside.
He really had personal business in here?
Even for an isolated training room, that was unusual.
Elena frowned slightly.
On the screen beside the door, a small technical message flashed: estimated time for full regeneration using room mana, 29 minutes and 48 seconds. She narrowed her eyes, and a thought crossed her mind like an arrow.
What the hell did those dummies say to him? Chapter 12. An almost peaceful Saturday.
Kane was lying in bed.
It was Saturday morning. He had just woken up and was still sleepy. The academy routine was starting to take its toll.
Busy days, intense training, and free time becoming almost a distant dream.
Having to wake up almost at dawn is insane.
He yawned loudly, turning to the side in bed.
I think I'll sleep a little more. After all, there's nothing mandatory today.
Saturdays were reserved for complementary classes, practical activities, or non-compulsory training. But of course, coming from Vehard Academy, almost all students were involved in crazy studies Kane had never even heard of.
Yesterday I overdid it. I think I'll start taking it easier.
Kane closed his eyes again, sinking his face into the pillow, determined to spend Saturday just sleeping.
Knock knock, knock knock knock. Nook knock bam bam bam. What the hell?
Kane got up irritated, hair messy, his expression loaded with morning rage.
Who's the bastard knocking at the door at this hour? It was Saturday morning. What kind of human being bothers someone at a time like this?
Out of patience, Kane marched to the door, fuming.
Better not be you, Marco. If it is, I swear. As soon as he opened the door,
he was surprised.
Yen was standing there.
She stared straight into his eyes, and then, her gaze dropped slightly.
Shirtless, you pervert.
She tried to slap Kane, but he dodged easily.
What a crazy girl, are you out of your mind? What do you want here? Put a shirt on.
She lightly pushed him back and slammed the door in his face, still standing outside.
The scene was surreal. She was the one who knocked, waited there like he was obligated to answer.
Yet she pushed him back like it was his fault for not wearing a shirt, and still had the audacity to slam the door in his face like she was the offended one.
TSK, now I'm being humiliated in my own room? Kane then went to look for a shirt in the wardrobe. 5 minutes later.
That's how long it took Kane to find a shirt he thought was decent. Not a long time, but for someone waiting outside, it probably felt like an eternity. He returned to the door. This time, wearing a black shirt that contrasted with the light tone of his hair and eyes.
Opening the door again, Yen was still waiting outside. I'm wearing a shirt now, you can leave, he said while starting to close the door.
Yen stopped the door with her hand.
Are you messing with me? Guess she didn't come here just to complain about the shirt. Are you going to let me in? What do you want this early? Can't you come another time? Early? It's already 9:30. You must be kidding. My time is different from yours. Are you going to let me in or not?
Seeing he had no choice, Kane just sighed, giving up on sending her away.
Be my guest. A girl in a guy's room? Kane didn't remember if that was allowed.
Not that he really cared, honestly.
So? What do you want? He seriously doesn't remember? Yen then held out a small wooden box with golden details. A gift?
I don't have anything to give you back, and even if just open it already, to Yen, that moment was torture. Having to walk across the academy, enter the boys' dorm, and hand something so important to someone like him. When Kane opened the box, he saw a crystal with a deep red hue, with fine golden veins glowing inside.
It was like holding a pulsing heart made of liquefied ruby. He recognized it immediately. It was a Viralis core.
She had promised to give it if he agreed to help her. Kane looked at her with a satisfied and slightly shy smile.
You didn't have to, bastard.
He had refused to help in every possible way, until she offered a rare and experimental item from her own family.
Only then did he agree.
Yen crossed her arms, trying to keep her composure.
I'm guessing you don't know how to use it.
Kane shook his head slowly.
No idea. She sighed. The process is delicate.
You need to be in a closed space with no distractions. Sit on the floor and stay completely still.
Controlled breathing. Relaxed body. She was trying to be as brief as possible.
Kane was already looking at the crystal like it was a bomb. The sound of footsteps echoed softly through the inner paths of the academy. It was Marco, running alone through a peaceful area called the Cloud Trail. It was an oval-shaped path that circled part of the central garden. The path was surrounded by short trees with silvery blue leaves, swaying gently in the morning breeze. It wasn't really meant for physical training, but for Marco, it worked just fine. He was a light magic user. He didn't use swords, spears, or gauntlets, and technically didn't even need to push himself physically. But being a commoner, he felt he had to work twice as hard just to stay among the best. He had barely made it into Class S. And he knew that once the month ended, the points would be updated again. If he wanted to stay there, he needed to give his all every single day. Farther ahead, Raiden was running alongside Darien. The two were always together on that trail, as part of a daily ritual Marco already knew well.
Should I invite Kane next time? Are you crazy, Marco? He shook his head, already imagining Kane's bored look and a mocking line, running on a Saturday? Pass.
Marco laughed to himself and continued his training. Somewhere else in the academy, on the high balcony surrounded by golden crystal frames, a girl was calmly sipping tea. The view from there was perfect. The place was decorated with light curtains, hanging like veils dancing with the wind, and a fountain sprayed water in delicate spirals at the center of the hall. This was the Hanging Garden of Valen, a space reserved for Iris's family lineage. Even in an academy that valued merit, some noble families still kept their privileges. Private reading rooms, meeting halls, and, in Iris's case, an exclusive balcony overlooking the campus. Of course, it didn't guarantee any advantage in classes. Tests, rankings, and results were the same for everyone. So it's true then? Iris was accompanied by two classmates, casually listening while sipping her tea. The voices around her talked more than she actually paid attention to. While pretending to be interested, her gaze stayed distant, lost in the ripples of the cup she held with elegance. The two girls beside her were gossiping about something boring. About optional classes no one cared about or a new set of golden wands released by a prestigious shop.
Iris listened without really listening. Until a name popped up in the middle of the conversation. Did you see?
They say Elena's been hanging around that boy, the one with white hair.
Iris slightly raised an eyebrow. Finally, something worth paying attention to. She didn't interrupt right away. She just tilted her head slightly and let the others continue. He's weird. No one knows where he came from. But they say on the first day he nullified Professor Aaron's spell without breaking a sweat. And he's always hanging out with that other commoner. Marco, I think. Iris then spoke, without lifting her eyes from the cup of cane, right? Tell me more about him. You know him?
The two girls exchanged a glance, then quickly continued, now more excited, trying to impress her. What the girls were talking about, Iris had already seen in the classroom. That wasn't normal. He used a really strange magic. And if he seemed close to Elena and lived alongside a commoner named Marco, there was more going on than the others realized. Elena gets close to those with potential, but I'm better at that. If Kane had any value, she would bring him to her side. With or without consent. Iris took the last sip of tea, calmly. Already thinking about her next moves. Kane had finished his conversation with Yen after listening to all the instructions on how to use the Viralis core. But his problem right now was something else. What do you mean, reading error? I just put money in you. He was standing in front of a vending machine, glaring at the magical screen flashing red with the message, insufficient balance.
Insufficient balance my ass.
You swallowed my coin, you cursed tin can. He was shaking the machine back and forth while grumbling.
Kane sighed in frustration. That was valuable money.
Not because he knew where it came from actually, he had found the coins in an old drawer while storing the crystal Yen gave him. But for someone like him, coming from a different reality, where machines were a synonym for capitalism and rampant consumption, of course he would try to spend it.
And the machine decided to rebel.
You piece of junk, if you're not giving me anything, at least give me my money back.
Excuse me.
A voice came from beside him.
Kane turned and found himself facing Elena.
Without another word, she inserted a bill and pressed a button on the machine.
The system lit up green, and the drink dropped perfectly into the collection tray.
She picked up the bottle casually and looked at him.
Want something?
Kane stared at her.
A serious look, almost dramatic. Elena sighed. I'll pay. Ah, fine then. I want something expensive.